So I think just starting off then, just in way of introduction. So my name's Jill Parker and I'm the Assistant Director of HR and Communications here at Doncaster Council. I'm also Vice President and a Senior Board Member of PPMA. So I do want to welcome you today to the first in a series of award-winning webinars where we're aiming to share experiences, insights, learning and practice that hopefully you can take away for consideration in your own organisations. I think for me, I've got a double hat on today because although I'm presenting this on behalf of PPMA, also it's the first in the series of these webinars, and it's all organisations who have been recognised and awarded for the efforts that they've put in, and today we're launching that with the first of these from Doncaster Council with regards to our Health and Wellbeing Initiatives. So hopefully you'll find this quite insightful. I'm now going to introduce to you my colleague Caroline Barclay, who's my HR Business Manager for Organisational Transformation, and it's someone who's been really instrumental in developing our initiatives of what you're actually going to see today. So I'm going to hand over to Caroline, who's going to take you through some of the, I think some of the practice and ideas that we've done over time, and hopefully you'll find these helpful. So thank you very much, and over to you, Caroline.
Okay, thank you, Jill. So it's a pleasure to be here today, and I hope you can now all see my slides. It's the first time I've shared slides on Zoom, so I'm hoping the technology is kind to me. So yes, we won the PPMA's Best Health and Wellbeing Initiative, and our submission was based around the work that we did using insight and innovative interactive resources to transform the way that we engaged with staff in our health and wellbeing services. So, I just have a slight problem with my slide not moving on. Now they've moved on too much. Okay, so thank you. So just to give you a bit of context and the reason why we made the change that I'm going to talk you through. So in the council, we've got a strong culture around health and wellbeing. We've done quite a lot of things. We've got strong services in place. We've got a good policy framework. Health and wellbeing is very prevalent in our workforce strategy, and we have 3 clear health and wellbeing priorities based around physical wellbeing, mental and emotional wellbeing, and financial wellbeing. So we have had what we thought were quite good services in place. And then in Doncaster, the first thing we had the floods, and then we had the pandemic. And that presented the council with a number of wellbeing challenges. So with the pandemic, I'm sure you're all aware of some of those challenges that it presented us in HR. So maintaining services was a key challenge when staff went to work at home. Not only did we have to maintain them, at the same time, we were rapidly introducing new services in response to the pandemic. Some particular services like adult social care had immense pressure on them. And not only did we have to change all the things in terms of services, our staff were also experiencing significant change in their personal lives. So we very quickly took a bit of a stock about our wellbeing offer. What I'm going to talk to you about today now is about how we transformed that offer. And we did it around 3 main strands. Firstly, introducing regular engagement so we could identify and respond really quickly to changing staff need. The second area was personalising our provisions to meet a much more varied individual need. So no 2 people's experiences of the pandemic were the same. And then the third area was we were transforming our staff engagement using much more creative and innovative means so that we could reach every far corner of the organisation. So starting with engaging our staff. So as a council, traditionally, we did a staff survey every 3 years. We had some wellbeing questions in it, but we didn't do a dedicated wellbeing survey. And quite early on in the pandemic, we determined we really needed to know about the wellbeing of our staff. So we introduced rapid wellbeing surveys. We didn't have capacity in HR to do surveys and to analyse surveys on a regular basis. And luckily, the private sector, Qualtrics, they'd introduced some of their surveys free into the marketplace for organisations engaged in health and social care to use free. So we, within a 24-hour period, we went through our procurement exercise, our IT board, and had a survey product that we could then regularly use. Now, this allowed us to track wellbeing across the workforce throughout the pandemic, and it continues now along a number of wellbeing dimensions. And the wellbeing dimensions that we've used throughout have been fatigue, connection, support, comfort in the workplace, and performance. Following our first survey, it revealed to us that there was a need for us to provide additional services and a need for much more personalised support. Taking support into staff's home, albeit in a virtual way. And also it revealed areas that previously hadn't been on our workplace health and wellbeing agenda. So areas such as isolation, areas such as mass pockets of the workforce dealing with uncertainty. We were overwhelmed really by our staff's engagement in our survey. Despite the pressures of work that all the staff were under, we got over 50% of our workforce engaging in our surveys. And not only that, one of the golden rules of surveys is don't ask a lot of free text questions. Well, we did. And about 95% of our staff responded, not only to the multiple choice questions, but they responded to the free text. So we had a real raft of rich information from the organisation. So having looked at that, we introduced different and more personalised services. So the first thing we obviously did was, like most of you, we transitioned our health and wellbeing services to virtual services. So our occupational health service, our physio, our counselling, they all went online or via phone. But we also introduced some new things. So we had a lot of staff reporting stress. So we introduced individual consultations and personalised programs to help staff with relaxation and stress, whether it be through things like relaxation techniques, meditation, mindfulness. We continued with our physiotherapy service throughout the pandemic in a virtual way, but we also added personal physiotherapy sessions for staff's home working arrangements. So early on in the pandemic, people were saying, oh, I'm not set up right at home, I'm getting a bit of backache. So they had a one-to-one consultation with a physio who went virtually into their home, looked at their setup and provided them with advice and support. Our social care services asked for psychological trauma support, so we quickly introduced that. We also introduced regular one-to-one emotional wellbeing drop-ins in some of our frontline service locations. To deal with the uncertainty, we had some group coaching for navigating the unknown and dealing with uncertainty. So we had sessions where staff could book on, we had manager sessions. We had enhanced our learning resources, so to deal with homeworking, just practical things like meetings, dealing with stress, engaging staff, making sure staff weren't isolated. And we addressed the issue of isolation. So we introduced things like randomised coffee meetings with staff. We introduced staff social groups where we asked staff themselves if they were interested in setting up a social group, and we helped facilitate that. So we had a vast range of those, including gardening, film, books, crafting, social groups running throughout the pandemic. And we also ourselves, we ran a regular Friday social after work on a Friday night, where we did quizzes or just a general sort of drop-in with staff wanting to get together. Again, that was all virtual. We extended our policy provisions. So back in 2019, when we reviewed our policy, particularly our sickness and our maximising attendance policies, we decided then we were spending too much time in HR and as managers dealing with sickness and not enough time preventing sickness and keeping people in the workplace. So we'd introduced a separate policy around maximising attendance, which was aimed at keeping people well at work. So we extended the use of some of these provisions. So we had well at work statements, which we used for people with disabilities or people who were having a life event that meant it could impact on their work performance or their well-being at work. We extended these to use them to keep people well in the organisation through the pandemic. We enhanced our performance and development reviews. We put in a much greater emphasis around well-being, and we introduced individual risk assessments around COVID-19. We also extended manager support. So we did a quick refresher of all our health and wellbeing provisions for managers, quick drop-in sessions to remind them. We did sessions on engaging staff, on managing virtually, and some top tips for our managers on keeping staff well whilst at work. But having changed these provisions, it's no good having the provisions if they're not reaching every corner of the workforce. So one of the key things that we did there was we really modernised our contact channels. We were a bit traditional. We used our intranet. We might use a staff email or our chief executive's column, or otherwise we relied on our managers to communicate. We quickly modernised our contact channels so that we could use posters with QR codes. We text messaged our staff with links to some of our resources, and we also used staff who didn't have a council email. We used their home emails to contact them. One of the more exciting and engaging thing was that we created quite interactive documents, and hopefully I will be able to show you just a couple of these if the links in the presentation work for me. So these were much more engaging documents. So previously our wellbeing resources might have been a Word document or a PDF document. We used, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Page Tiger, but we used Page Tiger resources. So we could embed videos into our documents. We could embed quizzes, feedback into documents, links to other things in documents. We also made a real special effort in terms of our diverse range of staff. So within the council, we had a programme of diversity events that we used to run in our workplaces. With COVID, we couldn't do that. So we had to, again, transition those to a virtual environment. So I'm just going to try and see if some of these will load up. So one of the things we did was we sent at Christmas our staff an interactive wellbeing calendar. And I'll just see if it will be kind to me. So all our staff got this interactive wellbeing calendar that they could then use, and it had a tremendous response. I'm just going to stop sharing because I'm not 100% sure about how to now get back from my interactive wellbeing calendar. So I'm just going to stop sharing and then just start sharing back my presentation. So if you can. Just bear with me. We also, so as I mentioned, we had some, we made special effort for our diverse range of staff. So Pride was one of our big events for our LGBTQ community. We couldn't run that due to the pandemic, so we did a virtual Pride for our staff. We still ran World Mental Health Day. We did tea and talks with the staff. And one of the other things that we introduced was we introduced a bounce back pack. So we thought there was a bit of a danger for when we started to come out of lockdown, that potentially our managers might think that everything would go back to normal and not really carry on with the personalised approach. So we introduced a bounce back pack, which took managers through a bit of a journey, thinking now about services post-pandemic, staff post-pandemic, and what that might mean in terms of changes of services, changes of expectations, changes of need. So in terms of success of the initiative, so one of the first things to say is we transformed our 3-yearly survey that we outsourced to being able to develop, create and run a survey and provide a report to our leadership team in 3 weeks. So it went from 3 years to 3 weeks. We really did transform our staff engagement. So the calendar that I just showed you, we had 1,700 staff visiting that calendar and opening the windows on that advent calendar on a daily basis. We had 1,000 staff using our bounce back pack. We had 250 of our staff who used the home physio assessments, and we had 200 staff who used our personalised stress support. But not only that, not only did we have really good engagement, when we did our surveys, we had some really outstanding results. So we had increases in staff who were reporting that they were feeling supported by their managers, increases in staff who were saying they knew how to access our resources, they were comfortable about accessing our resources. We also had a decrease in sickness quite a major decrease in sickness. And overall, we had a really good score around staff wellbeing, despite all the pressures and stresses of the pandemic. So as well as the statistical things, we had quite a lot of feedback, unsolicited feedback from staff, things like saying that they actually loved the new resources. Managers, because they had access to all our resources through a single interactive document, felt really confident when they were out on site with staff, that if staff had an issue, if staff had a question, that through their phone, they could access everything and anything. Staff themselves reported that the resources were helping them, and staff reported that the Well at Work statements were helping them to be able to have get the right support from their managers. Just to quickly say a bit about the impact of the award. So we've shared our practice. We think we've, and I do want to mention Page Tiger and Qualtrics because they have been instrumental in our journey. So, so our partnerships with them have been great. For our team, it's increased our confidence and our desire to push the boundaries. It's increased our profile outside, but also inside amongst our own staff, and allowed us to build up our networks and practice. So just my sort of final area I really want to talk about is where next. So we are using this approach to transform other areas of HR. So we're on with our recruitment resources and resourcing. In the health and wellbeing arena, we've got a focus on our financial wellbeing offer at the moment. We've got a real push and drive around enhancing that. For our general wellbeing offer, we don't want to lose what we've found out from the work we did during the pandemic. So we're going to continue our surveys. We're going to continue with our response. I've put in resetting as well. So from a health and wellbeing perspective, the organisation went through a massive change during COVID. Staff responded at a pace. Us in HR, we threw out the HR change resources that we'd used to take staff through change. Literally, change happened overnight. So there's a bit of a resetting for us in HR and for us in the organisation to acknowledge that staff are probably quite tired, a bit fatigued. We need to just allow them a bit of time and space to reset, to get back on track. And also the fact that some staff are still dealing with COVID responses, still dealing with the pressures of COVID, while for some of the groups of staff, they were relatively unchanged. So a bit of a recognition that staff need that time and space. And then I suppose the final thing is a bit about us in HR, because in HR, we are quite responsive. We are the can-do people. But we too, we've been running on that treadmill. We've been running on the adrenaline. We've not been taking our holidays as we should have been. We've been burning the midnight oil to support the organisation. So for us in HR, and I suppose it's a message to all of you, is, you know, there's a bit of a thing going forward about us taking a bit of time to look after ourselves. And I finally just leave you with a bit about the team contacts. So when you get the presentation, you're able to contact any of the team to find out a bit more information from us. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for that, Caroline. Hope colleagues did find that quite interesting and insightful. I've just had a couple of comments in the chat there. One is just around if we are able to share what we've shown you today and some of our links, in particular the Bounce Back pack and our interactive calendar. The good news there is absolutely yes.
Yes.
The whole point of these webinars is that we are able to share our resources, because our ethos is sharing is caring. So of course we will do that. And I'm just wondering, just got a couple more minutes. It's whether there's anyone got any questions they'd just like to ask on the webinar. And if not, you can put things in chat or we can follow up. And as we said at the beginning, everything you've seen today has been recorded, so we will put that on the PPMA website along with the slides. But as Caroline said, our contact details are there in case you do want to ask any follow-up questions outside of the session. So anyone got anything they would like to ask in the last minute or two? Okay, so just had one from Janet, just asking around difficulty in actually getting people engaged. And can you talk a little bit more about how we did this?
As I said in the presentation, I mean, we just made the initial contact by different means. So it was sending the personal email to the staff, it was texting the staff, it was going to people's home addresses, putting the posters up with the QR codes. Obviously, our managers helped us in terms of the communication. But I think one of the key things in terms of the engagement was the resources themselves. So with the Advent calendar, you know, if staff opened up that link in the text message that we sent them, they'd get the Christmas music automatically playing. You know, they'd never seen that type of resource from us in the past. So it was just so different from what we normally did, and staff really liked the videos. They're not having to read lots of things.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, we're just about out of time now, so we'll just like to say thank you very much, Caroline, for your presentation, and thank you very much for everybody who's attended. Like I said, I hope you found that helpful, and do follow up if you need to. Thanks very much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.